always preparing for the worst bit. It's getting nearer and nearer, and you've now got to start to make a decision. As a protection officer, you've got to get it right every time. The bad guy only has to get it right once. It's quite glamorous and it's quite exciting, and it's very, very dangerous. You may be on one of the biggest super yachts in the world. You may have flown there via a private charter. You may have gone to the private charter via Rolls-Royce. Taking the bullet and being a bullet magnet, you're actually protecting the role. King's Protection Officer assaults deaf and blind man.
I'm sure viewers would be very interested in finding out how the royal family live. How would you describe their lives?
My name is Simon Morgan, and I'm a former member of Royalty Protection, a specialist protection department in the Metropolitan Police Service that looks after the security needs of the royal family. Royalty Protection is a specialist role within the Metropolitan Police Service, and it's something that I'd always wanted to do, and I'd structured my career to get to that point. I'd previously been on the public order unit where I became a firearms officer. Then I went to SO19, the firearms team, to develop that skill set and those experiences and become an advanced driver. So actually, by the time I applied to Royalty Protection, I had most of the actual skills and courses the role needed. There's a physical element, and then I suppose you could argue a real world element. So the physical side of things is how to protect yourself, how to protect others. The physical side of things is most probably something that you will only use maybe once in your lifetime, or never at all. And then the next part is to learn the skills, the day-to-day skills of being a protection officer. Planning is core to your day. Most of your day is spent planning. That could be 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. You could be in a series of meetings, one after the other. You could be going to recce, have site visits. You could be planning the routes. You could be looking at what hospitals you'll need to be aware of, how you would get to those. So, to plan for your one day of going to open, going to close something, traditionally, a role of what we see the royal family doing, that may have taken 6 months. Now, when you're working with the younger members of the royal family, it's a case of, okay, what are we doing this weekend? Don't know yet. Same as a conversation that is had most probably through many, many households throughout the UK who have youngsters of that age. Don't know yet, waiting on a phone call. Okay, any rough idea? Because of course you always want to know what's going on. You're not being nosy, you're not prying, but you want to know what's going on because you've got to put a plan together because you're responsible for this individual's security. No, waiting on a call. Okay. And no, we're not going anywhere. Right, okay, everybody relax. Kind of calm down, let's go and get something to eat, that's great. No, I've had that phone call, we're now going out. Right, forget that, we're now on, plan D, and we're heading out of St James's Palace and we're heading west. Okay, where west? Don't know, waiting for the next phone call. Now you've got to start thinking a lot quicker. Who do we need to know? Or rather, what do we need to know and who do we need to tell? Because we may be going into a part of London that we need to know what the current intelligence situation is, what's happening. It could be the aftermath of a football match, it could be the aftermath of a demonstration, it could just be a Saturday night in the West End and nothing's happening. So we'd speak to the local duty officer. You're normally met with the local duty officer saying, I can't give you anything. That's okay, sir, we haven't asked you for anything, we're just merely letting you know that we're here. And that was normally followed by, just let me know when you leave. So that the policing of that local community can go back to normal. You're always preparing for the worst bit. You have to prepare up to that point because lots of the time that you get to plan, nothing should go wrong. But you've always got to plan that something is going to go wrong. Thankfully, I wasn't a royalty protection officer in the time frame of selfies. That's something that's evolved since I've left. That is a different aspect of getting up close and personal with senior members of the royal family. When the now king came back to London after Queen Elizabeth II had passed away, it was all selfies. It was all people wanting to shake his hand and take a picture with him. Now he's very amenable to that, and that's fine because you as the protection team have to work with that. within the environment, your principal is amenable to it, so therefore you facilitate that happening. But nonetheless, it doesn't take any pressure away from you. As a protection officer, now you've got to work exceptionally hard. You're looking for non-verbal communication. You're looking at people's clothing, all these things to see, are there people that are genuinely there to see the king, or is somebody there come to kind of do him harm? So you're going through all this, and it's done in a nanosecond. When you do a royal walkabout, for example, if you see somebody in that crowd who doesn't appear to be enjoying themselves, and it immediately draws your attention because everybody else is waving flags and has a big smiley face, because they want to see that senior member of the family. Now, that could be somebody who wishes to do us harm, or indeed it could be somebody who's deaf and blind and hasn't had that particular moment in time explained to them that Prince of Wales, the King, is standing in front of them at this moment. So if you then, as a protection officer, overreact to that and go over the barrier and effectively neutralise the threat, then that's the headline the following day. King's protection officer assaults deaf and blind man. But similarly, that could be somebody who has come there and their mindset is at that moment in time they are going to do the Prince of Wales harm. They've got a knife, they've got a gun, whatever the case may be. So you're looking. That's what catches your mind first time. That you look at their facial expressions. Then you're looking at the people around them. Then you're looking at what their body language is doing, and it's getting nearer and nearer, and you've now got to start to make a decision. Am I going to do something? Am I not going to do something? As a protection officer, you've got to get it right every time. The bad guy only has to get it right once, and that's a real kind of, maybe Hollywood view of looking at it, but that's the reality. You've got to get it right every time, because the connotations of getting it wrong are global.
I'm sure viewers would be very interested in finding out how the royal family live. How would you describe their lives?
I think despite what people would think, their lives are very ordinary. There's most probably a Hollywood view of what the royal family do and what they should be doing, but the reality is they're extraordinary people leading quite ordinary lives, certainly away from the public gaze. It's almost exactly the same as lots of other people. You have a job, and then you have your private life. And most of the time they're vastly different. You may have a persona in work that you're a senior manager and you're managing lots of people, and you're a global traveller and all these other things that go with that role. However, when you get home, you're just a dad or a mum or a brother, and you sit at home and watch television and you have a takeaway like everybody else. A lot of it is kind of persona based. So I think if you look at the royal family, there's their job, their day-to-day, Monday to Friday, not quite 9 to 5 kind of job. And then there's their private lives, whereby, they lead very much an ordinary life, doing ordinary things that aren't most probably too different to what you would think ordinary people do. I talk about that as a protection officer, so it automatically sounds a bit, okay, so you have these ordinary people who have all this security and all this protection. Yes, you do, but that's because of the role that they occupy. That's it. Whilst there's an individual within that role, you're actually protecting the role. You're protecting the position.
In terms of this whole Hollywood picture of like protection officer or a bodyguard, is it as Hollywoody?
Many years ago, there was a television series called The Bodyguard on the BBC. And at that time, it was written by a guy called Jed Mercurio. And I think it was the most watched program on the BBC ever. And, it very much gave an exciting depiction of what it was like to be a protection officer. That very much brought the role of the bodyguard into people's front rooms and gave them that imagery and this must be what it's all about. And it's quite glamorous and it's quite exciting and it's very, very dangerous. It's not really like that. if you followed a protection officer around for, a couple of days, it'd be, we've gone to this meeting, okay, we spent several hours there. We've gone to this tabletop exercise, spent several hours there talking about mitigation and contingencies. We've gone and had a look at a venue that we're going to, and we've walked, around it, through it, backwards, forwards, all these kind of options. But ultimately, that most probably wouldn't make good television.
So no car chases.
No. I mean,
No throwing yourself in front of the bullet.
No. I mean, that's Hollywood. That's taking the bullet and being a bullet magnet. That's what Hollywood would like us to see. I mean, you should be getting to the point that if you feel a situation is going that way, then you need to be back to the cars and gone or into a building or whatever the case may be. That's when then all your plans and procedures and everything you put in place come to the forefront, and you start making decisions under pressure, and that's what you do. That's why you're there. No, it's not like that, really. I think people would love to say it is, and it may increase recruitment. Whether that's the right kind of person that you're recruiting is most probably another question. But no, it's an extremely professional job. It's a job that takes a certain type of person. You've got to have the ability to walk and talk at the same time. Protection at this level is a thinking person's game. If you can't think, you're no good. You have to understand the nature of the role as a protection officer. You are there to support the principal in their everyday lives. Exactly the same as the chef, the gardener, the PA, the accountant. You're part of a team that supports the principal to go about their everyday life. Now, your part is security, and yes, I would argue it's quite important, because without that security piece, some of the other pieces can't take place. But you've got to be mindful that it is a role, and you've got to build a rapport, but you've got to know when the line in the sand is, because certainly when you're dealing with both members of the royal family and some of the wealthy clients that we work for now, their life is not your life. And you can't compete with that. When you're working with billionaires, that's not your life. So yes, you may be on one of the biggest super yachts in the world. You may have flown there via a private charter. You may have gone to the private charter via a Rolls Royce, but that's not your life. That's their life. You're there to support it, and you have to understand that. If you're an individual who gets kind of caught in the showbiz world, you get the red carpet fever, then this isn't the job for you. You've got to be very mindful that you are in a role. You may have, you're playing a character within this life scene, and you've got to be conscious of that, because yes, this evening we could go to the theatre. We could have the best seats in the theatre at a gala performance. After that, we could go to a 5-star Michelin restaurant. We could get driven there, in a Bentley. But then you put that protected person back into their £25 million home. You hand over to the residential team. You're finishing that night because a fresh team's coming on tomorrow to take that principal back out again. You go home. You're back into your life, your home life. You're back at the school gate talking to the other school dads, and the next meal you have may be a Nando's. If you can't separate the role from reality, then this isn't the world for you. So when I left policing, I then started up a private security business called Trojan Consultancy. And I was only able to do that because of my role in royalty protection, the training that I'd had, the experience that I had. And I looked to take all that experience, kind of skill set, and now take that into the private sector and work with people of wealth, visibility and status. That's what we say that we do. But I can only do that because of what I used to do. And the people that are on the team are also out of the same box as me. We only recruit former police officers who have served within those specialist roles because they have that skill set. They have that depth of experience. They're used to working with senior principals. They're used to working with senior people in business, household, other stakeholders as well. So all that experience, that global experience, we then work with clients in the private sector. But yeah, I wouldn't be able to to do what I do today, and the team wouldn't be able to do what we do today if we hadn't had that experience from our time in a specialist protection role within the police.